Sie hören, ich spreche, also ich probiere Deutsch zu sprechen. Ich bin aufgewachsen in der Nähe von Aachen. Ich spreche Kölsch platt. Man hat mir aber gesagt, Sie verstehen das hier nicht. Und damit schalte ich jetzt um auf Englisch. Und wenn Sie fragen oder diskutieren möchten mit mir, dann kann das auch auf Deutsch gehen. Also, sleeping giants or smart universities. For the past 25 years, I've done a lot of work in Germany. And I can tell you, the first time when I visited a German university, somewhere in the 90s, and I was in Munich, and I got home, I was shocked. When I started telling the issues and the problems you were encountering, and the things you were trying to achieve, and how you were trying to make education in a better way. And from then onwards, I've seen how in Germany started to change, in a good way, actually. And I said to Stefan Herzer when I just got here an hour ago, I'm really impressed, for example, with seeing how the University of Cologne is changing. And that's why I enjoy being here. But my talk is, the first part is, I have to warn you, it's really depressing. And once, so the situation I would say is hoffnungslos. And then I will change to telling you that the situation is ernst. And if there's still time left, I hope I will say, aber es gibt eine gute Hoffnung und man kann es schon machen. Also, ich arbeite an der Universität von Maastricht und um in Köln zu kommen, muss man zu Aachen fahren. Da gibt es keinen Ausweg. Und dann muss man auch die Deutsche Bahn nehmen, da gibt es auch wenige Auswege. Und the moment I'm crossing the German border, you notice things are different. The houses are looking different, people of course are different, but there's also a cultural difference. And it always makes me aware that basically I am a little American. And although I can understand the culture of Germany, because I have family living here, whatever, it makes me aware that the Dutch are very strongly focused to US. So in my talk, you should take care that whenever I'm shocking you, it's the American who's shocking you, okay? So when I finally arrived Cologne, and of course according to the timetable of the Deutsche Bahn, we had at least 10 minutes for Verspätung. And what is important to know is that when you start looking at Cologne and you compare it to Maastricht University, we are basically a very young university, and this is one of the main buildings of the university. It's a business school actually. And we are now in existence for more than 40 years, and we're very proud of it. And this university started as a revolutionary place, a medical school who started doing everything different as had been done before with other medical schools in those days. So we didn't lecture anymore, we had small group work. Students, the moment they were showing up in our program, the very first day they would encounter a medical patient. We gave them a lot of skills training. We prepared them for dealing with tough situations and so forth and so forth. And it was a great place to be. And I started working there at the end of the 70s as a graduate from a very traditional Dutch university, and I was constantly wondering and in shock basically, like, how are they doing this? Why is it that students are loving their own university? Because I grew up in a situation where I was fighting my teachers, where there was constantly revolution against the school, and those students are working together with their teachers in making their own education. And then after a while, and nowadays we are recognized as a university which is known for its educational innovation, which I will tell you a little bit later more about. Okay. So far, so good. In preparing the talk, I thought, well, what have I been doing last year in Germany? And what were the things I was noticing in my work in meeting people like you? And then I realized that this year I had many, many visits in Germany. And just to give you an idea about what are the talks, I started my work just a year ago in Delmenhorst. There is the Institute for Advanced Studies, and I wanted to have a workshop on curriculum contents because they were wondering, are we teaching the right contents at the right moment? And from there onwards, I went to Erfurt, and we had a workshop on academic development. I went to Freiburg and Breisgau, where there was a workshop on problem-based learning. Then I went to Cologne for a curriculum audit in the medical school. And then from Cologne I went to Bonn, again a workshop on problem-based learning. I went to Hasenwinkel, that's, yeah, it's far, far away. And we had a workshop for deans and vice presidents on curriculum planning. Then now I'm in Cologne again, and in a couple of weeks I will be in Leipzig for teacher training, and then the season ends with going to Freiburg again for an audit. So basically you may say that's a good sign. The bad thing is that I'm doing this all the time with Deutsche Bahn. Because when you start looking at them, I can tell you I've made many good friends during my train rides. People are constantly, immediately when you're having a delay, people start talking to me and explaining how bad it is, and it could be even worse in the situation and so forth. Just to give you an idea, just last week I was in Hasenwinkel, and my train in Hamburg was, on arrival, was already 5 minutes late. And within 10 minutes we had 20 minutes delay, so no issue. And there was one railway car was left behind somewhere, so there was not enough space. Then the air conditioning broke, and everyone started shouting and yelling, and you know, they had double booked seats reservations, and people were saying things to each other. Also, wir haben es da ja recht nett zueinander gehalten, wir haben es ja nicht gestritten dieses Mal und so weiter. And I started wondering, what is it with Deutsche Bahn? That there seems to be a plan, a timetable, but that's just an idea. It gives you some way of a direction what it could be. And that's what it is, and every time it's doing so. And so nowadays I talk to people from Deutsche Bahn, what's going on here? And why is this happening? And I get all those stories from them, why it's going wrong, and it seems like they can't solve the whole situation. And when you start looking at universities, sometimes I have the same feeling. There is a plan, but it's an idea. Because there are so many issues we have to work on to achieve what we're looking for that we are struggling in finding a way out. So how does this look like when you start looking about the things I've, for example, have been doing over the past couple of months? It's all about, you may say, it's all about providing people the tools to improve excellency in education. And they're very passionate about it. And if you reorganize all those workshops, you may say it's all basically about helping teachers and students. It's about developing the right pedagogies, thinking about what is technology, how could it help us, and it's about how can we manage the whole place. But in my view, that's just instrumental. Because the things we are seldom discussing is, what's the long-term plan anyway of university education? You know, why do we accept or assume that universities will still be there in the next 100 years? The answer is always the same. And people will tell me, wait, we have been working on this for 500 years. We were quite successful about it, and so we will be quite successful about it in the next 500 years. And that's where I start disagreeing with the audience. Because in my view, something is happening. And that's what my talk is about. And then I will reconnect to what Cologne is doing with the Innovationsplan. So what's the ambition of higher education? I think that most of us are socialized by the idea that a university is a community where you create new knowledge and where you keep the current knowledge, and where you are mentoring the young students to become young professionals or young scientists. And von Humboldt was one of the people who emphasized the importance of having communities where the students were not considered to be as a student, but as junior researchers, which are socialized in an environment of an academic community, die Lehr-Lerngemeinschaft. And this idea is still prevailing in higher education. Also in my university, it's the same idea. And then they are very passionate about achieving excellence. And this is also a photo I took at Humboldt University, where it says it's about top-level research and about creating the conditions for students and teachers to get the most out of it and, you know, achieving excellency in science. And I would say, who would disagree with this? I'm sure no one does. But in my view, there is a reality and there is a praxis. And there is a difference and a disconnect between them. Because when you start looking about university, you may start looking about what should a modern university look like? What do we have in mind when we are discussing the whole idea of no university? It's basically the idea of the school of essence. You know, it's a place where people meet and, well, we see some people sleeping over there, and here is a debate. It could look like a modern lecture hall in a way. I'm not sure whether this person drank too much or is reading it. I don't know, but there is at least there's engagement. People are exchanging views or whatever. And so start thinking about a place. Imagine a university where there's no management, no budget issues. The money is just there. There are no government rules and no audits. You know, that's a great place to work for because we feel we can work on content. That's what makes us passionate. And then, of course, there should be a lot of parking space at a university. And that's the ideal world we have more or less in mind. However, reality looks different. Because the modern reality is, and that's the thing I've seen at American universities just over the past 2 years, is in every talk, the moment the academic starts talking, they will publish their disclaimer. And it would say the views I express are my individual views and do not necessarily reflect the views of the department as a whole or of Maastricht University. And I felt shocked. Academics doing this, taking themselves seriously. It's like alle Angaben ohne Gewehr. Oder zu Risiko und Nebenwirkungen lesen, Ordnungsbeilagen, and so if that's a kind of our modern reality we are facing as an academic, the question is how do we deal with this modern reality, and what is the challenge for a modern university? Okay, so the discomforting reality in my view is, and I'm just shortlisting it, is there are too many rules and regulations. There are too many accreditations and reviews. There is too much talk about budget and profits. There are too many emails and bureaucracy. And it goes on and on. And those, I think, you know, which are affecting our daily practice. Yet, we are doing it for our students. And in Maastricht, just 2 weeks ago, there was summer sale. I took this photograph. It's a shoe shop. And they had this huge sign, "We hate sale, but we do it for you." And I thought, this is a crazy shop. You know, I wouldn't even want to go in there when there is sale and buying shoes, because you think, I'm doing something horrible for them. Now think about if we would simply change the word sale for the following world. We hate teaching, but we're doing it for you, students. And we are just forgetting that there is this nasty world around us which nearly makes it impossible to teach you. And that's the kind of I would nearly say, perverse situation we are more or less in. Okay, having said all this, I'm trying to get a little bit more optimistic. Because what are the drivers for change in my view for the next number of years? And of course there is a strong technology push, which whether we like it or not, it will affect the way we teach and the way we have to organize our university. And the second is our students are changing. And the third is society is changing. Society is asking different things from us. And that brings us together in what are the consequences for our teachers, for our curriculum plan, and what's the value of a degree in society. And I will talk about each of them and then reconnect it to what Cologne is doing right now. So in my view, what's the reality of higher education? The reality of education is, in my view, that students are changing. It's a matter of access. More students are wanting to go to a university. And this photograph, in my view, says a lot. It's the entrance exam for postgraduate studies in China. There are more than 12.5 million Chinese applicants taking the exam every year. And you know, that number is so large that I even can't envision anymore what's going on there. But when you talk with teachers from modern universities, they are constantly talking about there are too many students and we lack the capacity for dealing with it. So the first issue is how to create sufficient access to our universities. The second is, when you start looking about how students are changing, there is, and I'm not critiquing the students now, this is an American example, so we're not talking about Germans. The American example is, students don't like to fail anymore. Everything should be a success, like the director said. You know? How can you learn from failures? Well, you can learn a lot, research says. But we are no longer used to having a failure or dealing with situations which requires us to improvise. And this example was, for me, that was kind of shocking. It's about Harvard University. And the example says there were more than 100 Harvard students, and they were taking a take-home exam. And when they were caught, they were accused of cheating on a take-home exam, which is already an issue. Yeah? Why are you giving a take-home exam? And then you're just asking that people are cheating on the exam. But anyway. And when they were caught, the students started to complain, not the teachers. The students were complaining that the exam had contained unfamiliar terms. And this is an experience I'm sharing with many teachers in Maastricht. The moment the exam contains words they don't know, you get a lawsuit. Yeah? Okay. And then it gets worse. The students were allowed to use the internet. And how were they supposed to know that when the instructions said, do not discuss with anyone else, that meant they weren't supposed to email one another and share notes. So the situation turned upside down. The students now are suing their teachers, while normally I would have expected that the teachers would sue their students, because they were cheating. And what the book analyzes is that students or this generation, is expecting different things from university. And one of the things they haven't learned while they're growing up is learn to fail. And the book starts wondering what effect it has on what they're expecting from university teachers and so forth. So that's the first time where I felt like, and when I start looking at my own students, and I teach in a master program, I can say, yes, there is an issue over there. It's very difficult for students to fail. And to learn from failure, because they went from one success story to another. The second is, when you start looking about the value of degrees, there's also a change. Of course, employers consider degrees very important. But the value of the degree, there might be an issue. And the issue is grade inflation. And again, here's an American example. And it was published in the Washington Post, that's the newspaper site. There is also some science which has been done on this. And here it's again about Harvard. And this study says that at Harvard, the amount of A+ basically doubled over the past 20 years. I think that's in Germany that's equal to a 1, isn't it? And so I started wondering, what is it? Is my teaching getting so good? Or is it that our grading is becoming much too lenient? We are much too forgiving. Or is the pressure from our students building up so fast that we are giving in to our students? My wife, who works at a medical school, says that for many students in medicine nowadays, it's nearly unacceptable if they don't get an excellency when they are doing their clinical clerkships. They just expect an excellency, because that's the way it is. This study says in 2012 that A's represent 43% of all letter grades and an increase of 28% over the past few years. And I can tell you that my personal experience as a teacher is the same. And I have many students from the Netherlands and Germany who, if they don't get a 1.5 at minimum, I wouldn't say they are crying in my office, but I would say there is some issue. So then I need a paper tissue. Okay, so in terms of expectations and pressure, there's a lot of things are changing. Then looking at our teachers, the signals are also very clear when you start analyzing the way they perceive their work stress and workload. And this study said, oh, by the way, teachers, yes, We always assume, by the way, that universities are some kind of a homogeneous organization where people are sharing the same kind of goals. We agree upon what we're supposed to do. And this American president from the University of Southern California once said, staff are held together by a common grievance over lack of parking space. You know, meaning it's also the way we organize our teachers there is an issue. So if the students are changing and the teacher is changing, there might be an issue of, okay, of changing the situation. But when you start looking about research on teachers, the one thing which pops out all the time is that there seems to be an increase in cynicism and workload. And this is a typical UK study where they show that if you start looking at the levels of stress people experience in their job, the levels of psychological distress exceeded those in high-stress occupations, such as accidents and emergency doctors and nurses. I'm not sure how the situation is in Cologne. But at Maastricht, it doesn't take me that much time when I start interviewing my colleagues that they start complaining about the workload and how it has been growing and growing over the past 10, 20 years because of budget cuts, budget cuts, budget cuts. So there's an issue. Yeah, how much can you ask from your colleagues in the work they need to do? Here's another study which says that academic staff, almost half of the respondents find their workloads unmanageable. There's a fairly well-developed cynicism about management. So there is a disconnect on how teachers perceive whether they get support from management or whether they're working against management. And finally, it's unclear what the overall direction is of the department, and they lack feedback about their role in achieving it. So I also have the feeling like you go from one day to another while it's unclear what the horizon is of where does the organization want us to go. Okay, so that's the teachers. There's another signal, that's technology. So we had students are changing, teachers are, I would say there's a little bit of an issue of cynicism and workload, but technology is more like the avalanche which is coming. When you start looking about the technology, I always feel like you wouldn't even notice it changing our world. It's just happening, and then one day you wake up and you think that there are some issues with technology, what it's doing in our work and what the way we organize it. But it does it in a very sneaky way. And this cartoon, in my view, tells you everything. When I was a student, you know, but that, you may say, but that was 30 years ago. Okay. About 10 years ago, you would still go to the library, fill out a card for a book. You need to wait for 30 days, and then most of the time you would get a letter from the library saying how sorry they were, but the book wasn't available. Yeah? Nowadays, we feel it's normal that while you're sitting in a train, and suppose there is internet on the train, you go within 30 seconds to the server of your library, and within a rush of seconds the PDF is on your machine. There is no waiting time anymore. We don't wait anymore. And students, that's also fascinating in a way. While I'm still working on a laptop, our students are doing just this. You know, they pop it open and they use all their smart apps and to read and whatever. So they are living in a completely different world. Yet, we are not skilled, in my view, to keep up with those changes because, among many things, we lack the budget in doing so. We can't just keep up. But people are expecting so many things from us that the technology is like a toxic, in my view. The other thing is when you ask students what they appreciate about a university, and here's the shock. I organized roundtable sessions at Maastricht University a couple of years ago, and last year I did the same in Singapore University. And then students were constantly telling, we're not visiting the university because of the technology. Don't give us technology. We are coming there to meet other human beings in a human place, and we are so fat, we are not going to Facebook because we want to learn. The learning takes place in meeting the other person. So that's a good thing, you know, because it shows you that maybe those ideas of von Humboldt, where he said it's working in the community, are good ideas. They still hold, which gives us a vision for the future. Okay. Then the society is changing, in my view, because they are putting a lot of pressure on us that we should change. And government is putting a lot of pressure on us that we should use our budgets in a different way. And when you start looking about society, you can download several reports published by international think tanks where they are saying it's a matter of the avalanche is just coming. So, and it will, at some moment it will just be there. And then it's too late. And the kind of the discussions and debate which are typical in the literature about what's the future of university education are as follows. And this is, again, this is quite depressing on one hand, but okay, let's face it. This is a white paper which was published in the Lancet about medical education. And it says professional education has not kept pace with its challenges largely because of fragmented, outdated and static curricula that produce ill-equipped graduates. And I would say that's pretty harsh if you get that kind of critique, because we put a lot of efforts in it, our students are working very hard about it, and yet they're saying this about it. And then the paper says we should work on not only educating them to become a scientist, but they should become professionals. A professional can work in very complex organizations like hospitals are nowadays. The same critique, by the way, is published in business education. I work at a business school, and this is a typical comment you would get about working in a business school. Today it's possible to find tenured professors of management who have never set a foot inside a real business except as customers. That's the same as saying to a professor in clinical medicine that he has never worked in a hospital, yet he teaches medicine. That's bad, I would say. It's bad for a reputation, but it's also bad in the way, as academic, you want to help your students to become prepared for business practice. And if you start reading about what universities want to do, and I took a quote from the Strategic Task Force of Maastricht University, and they said, yeah, what we should try to do again, go back to the roots, and the roots are defined as there should be an educational environment where students from a wide variety of backgrounds genuinely and actively work together in an open process, both inside and outside the classroom, supported by staff members who serve as affirming and inspiring coaches. And again, you know, who's against it? But the danger lies in the word coach. So what I have in mind is basically it should be like a research community, like in a lab, where the mentor is working with the students on doing research and creating new knowledge and getting a better understanding of the knowledge which has been discovered so far. The problem then, of course, is that infrastructures like lecture halls, they are necessary, but it's not enough for making it happen. And then the question is then how do you organize such a place if you want to achieve this? Okay. So, if that's the case, then I want just as a Einstein would say, it's a thought experiment. Just start imagining the new university and just forget about, and don't say it can't be done because of the money, because of the government, because of our students. Then how would a really provocative new university look like? And Christensen published a book about this just a couple of years ago, and he said, you know, a new university would be a place where young graduates from high school, you will have a wide range of options instead of a narrow range of options. I thought, well, we can do this, that's easy. But every semester you can choose whether you want to study at home or at college. That's a thing where I'm sure that I would ask the audience that you would not say, this is my favorite stuff. You know, why would they stay at home? The answer is, of course, why should they be here? If you can find everything on the internet, then use the internet. That's what he is saying. And maybe the teachers on the internet are doing a better job than we are doing. That's what he is saying. So if the resources are there, use them. The third is, as a mind stretcher, you can customize your courses. Meaning, depending on your motivation, depending on your preferences and depending on who you are, you can build your own learning environment adapted to your needs. Just think about it. That's a, you know, it gets a little bit close to when you buy a railway ticket. You can buy a first class or a second class. If you want to have more comfort or less comfort, if you are saying, you know, I want to save my money or just throw away the money. That's also about personalizing. But what it says, you know, when you start looking at what technology is doing to us, our whole, you know, our laptops are basically personalized, our cell phones are personalized, then we should do the same in education. And why? He is saying, because if we don't, we may lose the motivation of students. And then what we normally do is we start complaining about the students when they're not motivated. And then there's a mind stretcher. He says you can design your own degree program. That goes even a first step further. That will ensure your employability. And you can take job-specific courses first and later add liberal arts. So he's turning it upside down. Yeah. First you start doing with I would say the tech courses, the professional courses, and then later on you would do the philosophy or whatever you think you need. So you start defining your own program. And why? Because it's geared around your personal interests. I told you this is a mind stretcher. It's like a thought experiment. It's not about we can't do it, but he is describing it. If the horizon is somewhere over there, let's see how far we could get. And then he says degrees are modular. So the degree itself is made up by your own selection of courses, and that defines who you are the moment you graduate. You can change majors without having to start all over again. Okay, and finally, but that's more for the Americans, you can graduate without a mountain of debt. Okay. I can tell from your faces, you're not really ready for this kind of change, aren't you? Be honest. Me neither. So that's the good news. The bad news is that society is more or less pushing us to a more individualized approach to education. And why? Because outside the educational classroom, it happens every moment. Everything, the technology has made it possible for us that everything gets to us instead of we are bringing. So there's an issue. And the question is whether we can ignore that issue, yes or no. And so in my opinion, higher education is, and now the optimism gets in, yeah? So we got the worst part now. Higher education, in my view, is at a crossroad. And this is a photograph I took 2 years ago when I was in Ottawa, in Canada. And I was sure, and I needed to cross the road. And I was sure that the government of Ottawa wanted to protect me. They didn't want me to being hit by a car. And as a Dutch guy, and if you have been to Amsterdam, you know that the Dutch just simply ignore any traffic sign. I was wondering, was it like this one or could it be that one? That may be, I don't know. And at some moment I decided to cross the road, and of course what happened was obvious. I nearly got hit by a car. The story behind it, then I realized that because of the regulations, we were over-regulated. The problem was just increased by the regulation. And in my view, what's happened with higher education is that we can't go on the way we are doing now. You know, it's not a matter of building larger lecture halls, of larger PowerPoint screens, of having more bandwidth on the internet. We need to change, in my view, because you can either continue as an industrialized system, because that's what we have gotten so far. My Dutch colleagues are always saying, when we're not a cookie firm, manufacturing plant. My answer is we are. We are already in. We are producing cookies. And we do it in a heavily industrialized way. And we need to find a way out of it and go back to our roots. I'm not saying I have the solution, but that's where we should go. And I am much more trying to seeking for how can we incorporate what we're doing to the changing needs of society and our students. Okay, if that's the case, so if I'm going for that direction, the question is how could it be done? And one of my favorite books at the moment is this book, Smarter, Faster, Better, where Charles Duhigg is analyzing why some companies become great companies or remain great companies. You know, maybe you've never wondered why Apple and Samsung became great smartphone industry manufacturers, and Nokia just disappeared. In a couple of years, no one will ever know again what Nokia was all about. While they were just 10 years ago, they were dominating the whole market. And in this book, he says, you know, the good companies, the good organizations are the ones who find a balance between defining the SMART goals, meaning the short-term goals. But the problem with short-term goals is the moment you have done them, it feels like I did my job for today. So it might be as a teacher at the university, I did my job today, I emptied my inbox, I did all my emails, almost my students passed, I did the teaching. Or are you a mind stretcher? Thinking in terms of what is the ultimate consequence of education? What in the long run are we supposed to do? And basically he says you should find a balance between it. And if that's the case, so with the long term versus the short term, the question is that what could universities do in this respect? Maastricht University started a program like Cologne just a couple of years. And we had a budget of 1 million euros per year, and faculties could submit their ideas for a maximum of 100,000 euros per year. And we also had small grants, 5,000 euros each. We call them micro grants. And because when you start thinking, what's 5,000 euros anyways? The thing is, the surprise was that the most productive projects with the most far-reaching impact were the ones with the 5,000 euros. It wasn't the large projects which made it different, were the small projects. Because people felt very proud to get the money and do something, and anyone could apply, by the way, for those projects. Whether it was the receptionist, a student, a teacher, it didn't matter. And if you applied for such a grant, you would get an answer from us, because I was one of the coordinators of that program. Within 3 weeks, we would tell you, here's the money. And there were no rules, there were no regulation. Here's the money, just do it, and we expect you from 6 months from now that you will present your work. That was the only requirement we gave. And we ended up with this. Within a couple of years, we have more than 100 projects within the university, all over the place. And it was good, because there was a lot of energy. And I think that's more or less what's happening now with the innovation program at Cologne. Or there are some question marks with that kind of approach, which I will tell you later. The School of Business and Economics then started a similar program just 2 years ago. And we started working about a business school of the future, because we want to make a difference. And we had zero budget. And the focus in this case was on all the core process. So not only about education, but also about the way we manage ourselves, the way we organize the research, the way we organize the education, and the way we manage the human resources within our place. And we also started looking about the support processes, so the administration, for Walton, as you would say, and looking about what budgets are doing to people, and what's the whole infrastructure we are looking for. And we started dreaming about building a new school, just as if there is no boundaries at all. And no one will say, you know, it can't be done. And when I started to compare those two approaches, I thought, this is more or less what Cologne, as far as I've seen, is doing now, which is a good thing, in my view. Because what I experienced at Maastricht University was that there was nearly no resistance when we started this whole project, because I met many people who just loved doing and creating new things. And there were many, many applicants for those small grant programs. And at some moment we would organize conferences like this, and the place was just packed with project leaders, with students and teachers, being very proud of what they had achieved. the question mark then was, once it was running, and more people were getting engaged in this, let's say, bottom-up change process, in institutionalizing on what was achieved. It's like, you can imagine in Cologne, that once the train is running, and more people are jumping on that train of continuous change, the question can be, for the top at the university, is then how are we secure that the change will continue? And is it bringing us in the right direction of, let's say, the university of the future? Is that where we want to go? And this has been an issue for the last 2 years, I would say. We are struggling now with it. Now, we had the people on the train, but the question is, then, does it bring us to the university of the future? Looking at the School of Business, what I noticed over there was when we started it, and they invited me for being a chairperson of one of the task forces on educational innovation, basically I didn't want to. Because I thought this is another time period where people will resist it and they will tell me and critique and whatever. I just want to do my job. But then I noticed that the Mittelbau, the junior teachers and the associate professors, they were very enthusiastic in doing it because they could envision a new school of business where students were no longer going to lectures, for example, but from the very first day they would start working in a business project and, realize at some moment that you need knowledge to work on it, and then start teaching them from the relevant disciplines which may help you in solving the issue. So turn the curriculum upside down, not from theory work into practice, but start with practice and then slowly start working backwards to mathematics, statistics, finance, accounting, marketing, and so forth. And when we were discussing this, someone said, let's Harry Potterize the place. I don't know about Harry Potter, but that says more about me. But he was meaning, it should be a place of magic. A place of magic where if the project is leading you in doing the work and you feel like, as a student, I feel very enthusiastic because this is my project and I want to know and I want to present to industry. And then the science comes in the moment I need it. That's the place we have in mind right now. The problem, of course, is obvious. Then how are we organize it? Because our annual intake is more than 1,000 business students every year. And we don't have the space for doing so. And maybe we don't have the budget. But our dean keeps pushing us and saying, don't bother about the money. That's old-fashioned thinking. Just forget about it for a moment. Just tell me first what you want to do, and then we will start seeking for the means and doing it. So it's about skilling the people and also giving them hope for, yes, we can. And yes, we can change it without all the people who are saying it can't be done. And this is, the university basically over here did the same. But since it's quite a complex organization, and we're quite large, that takes just more time in making it happen. Okay, so as a final slide. If that's the case, because the rector said he didn't see how you can learn from failure. All the research says that innovation only is successful in environments where you can thrive on useful mixed state, and you shouldn't, and it doesn't work when you suffer when the demands of quality control overwhelm you. So what it basically says, if there is a very strong culture of trying to be in control of everything and working according to the plan, you can never make the innovation, because when you innovate, by definition, you will fail several moments. But the failure, you can work with it the moment you start research on why did it go wrong. And if you have collected the data on why it went wrong, you learn from it. Because that's the way we do it in science, isn't it? Many times, your theory or hypothesis don't work, and you start reconfiguring and redesigning your research, and then finally you got it, this is the way I should do it. That's basically learning from failure. And that's also what this book says. If you want to change something, you should learn from your own failure by doing the research. And I want to end with a quote from a German professor He's a Studiendekan at the Ruhr Universität Bochum. And he just said last week to me, you know, when you start looking about the way we plan curricula, the whole thing with curricula is that any plan has its fundamentals on many unquestioned assumptions. And as a consequence, we are withholding new students and teachers the richness of new experience and knowledge. And what he was saying was that we should allow ourselves and give us more freedom in experimenting, and that the research should be the driver for learning, and that should shape our curriculum. And then all the other activities which are necessary in terms of teacher training, student training, technology, just follows from this. Okay. Having said all this, I would like to say that's all, folks. And I'm, according to schedule, I'm 5 minutes earlier than what was planned. What I want, the key message I want to give you is, the first thing is I highly appreciate and see the importance of what Cologne is doing, because it more or less goes in line with what Maastricht has been doing for the last couple of years. The second is that such a program allows you to experiment and learn from your failures, which is a very strong tool for making it happen. And the third thing, the third message I'm giving to you is, whenever you're doing this, you should always keep stretching your mind and think about the unthinkable. How could the magical university look like of Cologne? And that's the long-term horizon which you should try to connect with this short-term. So I would like to thank you very much. Also, I'm looking at Stefan Herzig as one of the leaders of this innovation program. And thank you that I could attend this session. Thank you very much.